Hey guys, this is Grandmaster Perlstein, and today we're going to talk about Gotham Chess' favorite way to try to meet the Karo-Kann with a fantasy variation, and specifically how do we play against it if we are black. So after the moves e4, c6, the point of the Karo-Kann is of course to strike the center with d5. So the fantasy variation is the line after d4, d5. And rather than playing pawn takes pawn or e5 or protecting that pawn with a knight, none of these moves are played. Instead, white plays this very unusual move f3. And the point, of course, is white wants to maintain very powerful center after pawn takes, pawn takes. And white's going to get two center pawns. That is why I don't recommend to take the pawn. Instead, I'm going to recommend to play this move e6. So e6 is not your typical Karo-Kann move. Why? Because in the Karo-Kann, the whole point of the opening is to get the bishop outside the pawn chain and then play e6. But how can you get the bishop when both of these squares are covered? There's no way to do that. So we have to switch course. And keep in mind, the pawn on f3 is more of a defensive pawn. It's actually blocking the natural development from the knight. And here, Gotham Chess recommends just kind of natural development moves for white. So like knight c3. And I actually like the idea to offer the bishop trades. We actually want to trade the c8 bishop with this very cool move b6. And if bishop d3 is played, we can play bishop a6 right away. And that's the whole point of this setup. Sometimes white starts with the move bishop e3. In that case, like I said, we can start with bishop a6, bishop takes, knight takes. And if they play this natural queen d2 castle plan, we actually can develop just as well. This knight can go to f6. If e5, the knight ends up going to d7. And this, again, our dream Karo-Kann structure. And the other benefit is the bishops are traded. So you may wonder, what is the plan if white just starts his pawn storm on the king side? We actually don't want to commit the king to the king side too early. Instead, I would recommend to focus your energy on getting the counterplay going immediately. So how can we do that? We can immediately actually play this move c5. In f4, we can even play potentially c4. And I like this pawn storm. Just give up the b pawn and just pawn storm the king. If knight takes, you can play either queen b6 or rook b8. Probably doesn't matter in which order. And the whole point is this king is vulnerable. Rook b8. This king on e8 is quite safe. There's going to be lots and lots of pressure. They would have to play b3. Notice how the bishop can't pin the knight on c3. Queen can go to a5, and very unpleasant. Whereas at some point, we're going to castle and activate the other rook. But I think white will probably lose the game beforehand. The attack is too strong. So any questions so far?
No, everything's clear for this one.
So let's go back. So now you guys know the main idea. And can white, the question is, avoid the bishop swap? Well, the only way white can avoid the bishop swap if white plays this move knight to e2. But then this bishop is actually quite passive. And guess what? Black has the same concept. Knight can go to f6. The bishop can go to e7. And if e5 ever happens, again, the knight gets redirected here with a pretty clear plan to play for c5. As a matter of fact, this is more of a French than the Karo-Kann. And the French, this is so-called bad French bishop. The goal is to put it here. But the difference is a huge difference. In the French, white gets to play f4 in one go. Notice in this game, white played f3, which is kind of a tempo loss if you think about it. And if white plays f4, c5, already black is getting the counterplay. Yes, black also lost the tempo on c6. They would cancel each other out. But the huge benefit is, of course, the development of the c8 bishop. So this is sort of the main ideas of this opening. Let's see if white decides not to pursue this plan and try something else. what else can white do after the move b6? I guess there's really not much white can do. Some people have a question what happens if e5 early, stopping knight f6. In that case, the plan does not change at all. Bishop still goes here. c5 is the general idea. The knight can stay for a little bit longer on g8, but you could still develop it to e7 and potentially f5. So this is a very simple idea. And if they ever trade the pawns, you actually have a pleasant choice. You can take either way. This is, again, typical of the exchange French with a really bad pawn on f3. And these two pawns are not that bad. And nothing wrong with c takes d either. In both cases, black is doing quite well. So this concept of meeting this plan with b6 and kind of taking the game into the French-like structure, keeping your options open, when to undermine with c5, I think is the easy solution to the Karo-Kann fantasy variation.
This is one thing that I want to tell you about. It's like there's a certain, I'll say, deviation of this fantasy variation. So after, like, let's say a move 3, white plays, instead of f3, plays knight c3, and after takes on e4 with the d pawn, knight c3 is white. Now white goes f3.
Ah, this is like a gambit.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a tricky line, guys. And the whole point is after you take on f3, now white can take with the knight. 2 knights already developed, right? And this is your question. I actually think this is not as good version of the fantasy, because in this case, you get this tempo, very important tempo, to get the bishop out. And after bishop here, the key is not to blunder a famous tactic. Let's just say you play like a random move like g6. Here, you could get in trouble. There's actually knight e5, bishop takes f7, checkmate. So this is the kind of tactic you have to be careful about. And if you play knight f6, you actually get into trouble same exact way. So after knight e5, bishop takes, bishop f7 is made. So the key is whenever you see this bishop c4 and this bishop on g4 is unprotected and there's all these tactics, just play e6 and that solves all your problems. Now the pin is still there. That's the key. This bishop is now biting on granite and black is playing the typical Karo-Kann with knight f6. Bishop can go to e7 or even d6, knight bd7, and then you can castle either way, either castle kingside or you can play queen c7. And then if you're a more ambitious player, you can castle queenside, which I believe is completely fine as well.
Hey, check this video out to make sure that you get more important information to bring your chess to the next level.